Well, I really want to thank you for the invitation to share an update on the MAG Regional Active Transportation Plan. This is a pretty major undertaking for MAG, and this will really help shape how we as a region are investing in walking, biking, and other active modes. And I think a large focus of this plan is providing kind of the technical foundation for identifying those regional projects in our region. This next slide, I know this group doesn't need to hear this definition, but it's here and I just want it doesn't hurt to go through it one more time. So what is active transportation? And really active transportation connects you to where you want to go using human-powered travel. And that's obviously most generally refers to walking and biking, but it also refers to other modes of active travel. In order for active transportation to be successful, it really depends on safe and connected infrastructure, such as sidewalks, on-street bike facilities, multi-use paths, as well as safe and accessible crossings. Active transportation has local benefits connecting us to our neighborhoods and destinations, but it also brings regional benefits, easing traffic congestion, improving air quality, enhancing public health, as well as providing affordable access to jobs, services, and schools. So the purpose of the study, yeah.
So you're coming in just a little bit faint for me. I don't know if maybe just speak a little bit like into the mic.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know.
No worries.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
That's better.
Okay, you can hear that. I'll lean forward a bit. So the purpose of the study is to identify active transportation needs and priorities, and this is to guide the investment decisions under MEG's Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, or the RSTIP. I really hate that long title, the RSTIP, and really the RSTIP served as the basis for the extension of Prop 479, the extension of the half-cent sales tax. And that RSTIP has dedicated $800 million over the next 20 years, specifically for active transportation and a new competitive funding program that will yet to be developed. So the regional active transportation plan we're developing now is really implementation focused. It's using regional data and analysis to evaluate system performance and prioritize projects. And ultimately, this will provide that technical foundation to turn those policies from the RSTIP into actual on-the-ground infrastructure, which is really, really exciting for the region. So there's 4 objectives for the study. The first is assessing the existing network. We're just getting a clearer picture of where our walking and biking system works well and where those gaps are. And that is our goal, is to identify key needs and opportunities to strengthen the system. Secondly, we're identifying and prioritizing needs, so we know which active transportation improvements are most critical, both regionally as well as locally. And the goal is to ensure that both regional and community needs are addressed. Third priority is to actually recommend those competitive funding programs that are called out in the RSTIP that will direct dollars to projects that have the greatest impact on safety, connectivity, and community benefit. And the goal is to ensure that those investments deliver the greatest regional benefits. And that's a large component of the active transportation plan. A large task is actually kind of recommending those specific funding programs, and we'll be bringing those recommendations through the MAG Policy Committee for approval when we actually accept the plan when it's completed. And then actually, and further, once those kind of rough programs are identified, we'll be taking specific kind of policies and procedures through our Active Transportation Committee. So they'll help, kind of develop how we do these call for projects, what projects are eligible, kind of the whole funding strategy, a combination of federal as well as sales tax funded projects, and how we actually administer those projects, both regionally and locally. Fourth is, which is an exciting component of this project, is how we track progress. We'll be developing some performance metrics and a public dashboard that lets MAG member agencies and the community see how investments are delivering results over time. So this is really ensuring that those are moving those projects forward, and we're able to measure those impacts. The study area is the Metropolitan Planning Area for MAG. That includes all of Maricopa County and parts of Pinal County shown on the map. It's really that thicker teal line that you see on there. The project is being led by our technical advisory committee. There are roughly 17 members. These are all MAG member agencies, generally from our active transportation committee. And then we also have staff from MAG and from our safety team, our data analytics team, and our programming division. So as we're developing these funding programs, we're able to kind of bring in their knowledge early in the process. And so we can, because there's kind of a short timeline, we'd love to have the competitive program up and running in 2027. So it's important to have our folks involved early in the process so we can get that going. So more to come on that. So project schedule, we're in the phase 1 of community engagement, and thank you so much for sharing all of that great information on your on the invitation. You shared our project website as well as the interactive map and survey, which I'll touch on later. So right now we're in that phase 1 where we're gathering some existing conditions information through that online map and survey. We'll be reviewing the existing conditions and gaps analysis at our next technical advisory committee coming up in October. So that's where we are now in the process. And then coming up, we'll be starting to look at those regional projects and those program recommendations, developing the performance metrics and how we're going to measure those and how we're going to report those out to the community and to MAG member agencies. And then further on, we'll be developing those implementation strategies, which includes the funding programs. And then we'll be wrapping up with a final plan to be accepted by MAG Regional Council in August of 2026. So it's an 18-month project process, and we're about 7 or so months into that right now. You did share this link, but here's a QR code. We'd love it if you could add your comments to this map. It's super critical to hear. You know, we're using a lot of data analysis, but at the same time, we really need to hear on the ground experience. That all feeds into how we identify the needs and the gaps, as well as funding programs. So there is the interactive map, and then there's also a link to a survey as well, if you could take that. And then we do have a project website where you can access that information, and we'll be posting updates on the website. And if you want, there's a link to sign up for our email distribution list to get project updates. And that is all I have. That was a quick overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I really look forward to, well, I'll yield. I didn't use my hand.
Gretchen, I think you're muted.
Go. You don't have to yield for my question. Go ahead.
It's okay, Gretchen.
All right.
Ryan just got in line, so he's second in line. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just this is, you know, I'm not a transportation guru, so but one of the things that's been important for 25 years in my neighborhood, and I'm sure it, you know, applies to many other neighborhoods. We have a major railroad that comes between the neighborhood and their junior high and high school. And I wonder if that's one of the things that you can identify where there are, you know, obviously it's easy to do like half-mile grid. Do we have a solid half-mile grid? But also, are there specific places where where our kids can't possibly grow up safely riding a bike because there are no options, or walking to school. And I'm just wonder how you think about that in the transportation criteria kind of.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. And we are looking at sort of those, the large regional barriers, which includes highway crossings, river crossings, and things like that. So we are identifying those areas where there is a high likelihood or a need for connectivity and where those barriers are. So we are looking at that regionally, and then we'll be addressing those in a variety of probably program recommendations that will look at kind of those larger regional scale projects, as well as how we're focusing on the local community projects. So it will come up. Connectivity is extremely important. So we'll look at those areas where there are those major barriers that will need a significant investment to make anything happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm excited for this because Prop 479 has brought a whole new funding scheme and enhanced funding opportunities for active transportation, as well as now MAG has a more integral role with transit and how that all connects. And I remember being on the committee, and um, there would always be sort of these joint meetings between the active transportation committee and other committees. So I kind of look forward to maybe seeing that relationship enhance, and
Mm.
would love to see that reflected in sort of the implementation strategies that you all consider early on, as how these committees can sort of work together. And I think that the complementary funding streams will be helpful for not for breaking out of the silo effect a little bit. And I wonder if there's already been sort of any preliminary conversations to reflect that intention.
Yeah, that's really good insight, Ryan. We are having conversations on how we can integrate our committees to enhance projects and project prioritization and project selection. We have our TISMO team. We have a new manager there, and he's bringing in active transportation staff, updating that regional TISMO plan. We're really looking at safety at MAG and how we're integrating safety into every project, not just like a safety committee, and it's maybe a little bit siloed. So we're working now on a strategic plan on how we integrate that throughout MAG. So I think, and with active also, I think because of the funding source and because of, I guess, the level of impact, I think the active transportation committee's role could potentially expand, but we're looking at that and how to make that work. So there's a lot coming up for MAG, I think, in concert with this plan and other plans that are happening right now. So it's exciting, and I have to put a plug out there. We don't have a representative for, like we did before with Maricopa Public Health. So we don't have anyone. It's there was interest, and but so I'm putting a plug out there to, if you know of folks who are interested, that would be wonderful. And then maybe waiting a little bit until we have a greater understanding of what that committee looks like. So it could even expand or shrink. I don't know. So
Yeah, Ryan and I are both ex-members
I
of
know.
the Active Transportation Committee. I know Ryan was also with City of Maricopa and then Maricopa Public Health. And I think the team that would sit on that committee, unfortunately, they're one of the ones affected by the SNAP Ed cuts.
Okay.
But maybe there's someone else, yeah, within the department that could sit in that role at some point. Any other questions for Kay?
Yeah, this is Dean. I have a couple questions, Kay. Going back to the slide with the study objectives, I think I have a question about each of the objectives. Assess the existing network. Now, is each one of the members of MAG doing their own assessment, or how is that being
So
addressed?
we're sure. So It's a combination of both. So one, we're trying to understand what the existing conditions are. So we have a lot of data to show what's on the ground as far as bike and ped infrastructure. So each member agency is kind of filling in those gaps, making sure that data is correct. But then for region wide, we're doing separate analysis. We're looking at a level of traffic stress for bicyclists on the network. We're looking at doing crash analysis. We're looking at travel demand for active transportation trip potential analysis, as well as pedestrian, what's called soft barrier analysis. It's like a level of traffic stress, but for pedestrians. And so we're using all of that data regionally, but then of course, and then each member agency is going to be reviewing that technical advisory committee to make sure it makes sense, it's accurate, it's kind of representing what they're seeing. And so it is a combination of both.
Okay. I think I understand that. Identify and prioritize needs. Is that again going to be the advisory committee, or who will be doing that?
That will be mainly the technical advisory committee doing that. Of course, our consultant, well, we're working with Alta Planning and Design. So they'll be helping us identify what those regional needs are kind of based on the analysis. So it'll be recommendations. And then also those local and sub-regional projects. So they'll be kind of laying that framework, but the technical advisory committee will be making that recommendation.
Will individual municipalities be able to come forward with their own recommendations as far as the projects that they want to see implemented or incorporated into the plan?
Well, I think there'll be probably a prioritization matrix to make sure those projects are, will implement the vision and goals that will be established as part of the plan. So I don't think it'll be like a process you might be familiar with when
Right.
each individual agency submits projects for like the regional transportation plan. And they're all
Right.
prioritized and ranked. It'll be probably a little more strategic than that. And of course, with the funding programs, there's going to be, these aren't the end all be all projects because we know conditions are going to change on the ground. So there'll be kind of a framework where people can submit project proposals through those funding programs. Even if they're not in the plan, because they meet the criteria and conditions changed on the ground and there's priorities or things like that. So there's flexibility, but we are going to definitely try to identify the regional and sub-regional and those major local projects.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm glad to hear it's going to be more strategic than the regional transportation planning process. Next item is to recommend funding programs. And again, this will be addressed through the technical advisory committee.
It will.
And I was going to say, and then what input or what is the process as far as the municipalities or the member organizations and municipalities primarily addressing those programs? And if, say, for instance, one city has preferences that don't agree with the priorities identified, then what? I mean, with the number of members there are, it seems like there's a lot of potential for probably conflict isn't the right terminology, but again, various communities having preferences as far as what gets funded and what may not get funded.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a pretty diverse perspective on what projects get funded, but this is mainly a regional transportation plan trying to meet regional goals for connectivity and safety. So, that is probably going to be the most important. The funding programs, I believe, will be and I can't say for sure what they're going to be because it is coming out of the technical advisory committee, but of course it is
Right.
has to go to all of our technical and policy committee discussions. So things can change, but I believe there'll be flexibility to make sure we're able to address some of those local needs as well. Because we understand some communities may have projects more projects could be identified more heavily in one community over another. But we understand we have to have that flexibility because connectivity within a community is also extremely important. So we have to
Yeah, no,
find
I think
a
that's,
balance. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, to me, that's really what's important is the connectivity between the various members of MAG and making sure that uh, is happening in one community, once you reach that boundary as far as the of the city or the town,
Mhm.
that you have a similar approach in the next community. So you have that connectivity and continuity of the design. And
Mhm.
then finally, track progress. I guess that just again is the use of the dashboard. And then will there be an annual review and then potential amendment of the plan?
Well, we haven't got that far in the process.
Oh, okay.
But I can see that it would make sense to definitely report out annually to our committees and to our policy makers at MAG. I think that would be important to see what those impacts are, at least being able to report out on that. And I don't know that maybe the first year or so isn't probably the best. It'll be a new program, so to measure impact, it might take a few years, but at least we'll have some kind of mechanism to report out on the program itself.
Okay. Then one final quick question. I hope it's quick. When you have the first phase is the community and stakeholder engagement, are you looking for individual residents of, say, for instance, I live in Chandler. I come to a meeting and a meeting that you're holding and say that no, Chandler has bike lanes on the arterial streets, but nobody rides those bike lanes because they're only 5 feet wide or 7 feet wide or whatever, and it's extremely dangerous. And we know that in talking with residents who do bicycle that they don't ride on the arterial streets. So is that the kind of, that I guess that's somewhat negative, but I think it also responds to a critical issue, probably not only in Chandler, but every other municipality in Maricopa County. So that would be the kind of, I mean, you're looking for that kind of input, or not to that level of detail.
Oh, I would love that level of detail. The interactive map and the survey,
Mm-hmm.
where that level of detail, that's where we really want to gather that information. So
Okay,
welcome
good.
that. Wonderful.
Good. Well, I appreciate your presentation. Very, very interesting. And I'm looking forward to working on this particular project.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited as well. And I'm happy to come back at another time, kind of give an update, and then and maybe if I don't know if I could send information as to upcoming events and things like that directly to you guys, I could happily do that as well. But I think signing up on the email distribution list is helpful, just so I can just do a blast out to everyone. But I'm more than happy to reach out to AALC and with information, and definitely come back with an update. That would be great.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Dean, for your questions. I had one quick question, Kay, on the TAC. Do you mind going to the slide with the members? I was just curious whether or not ADOT had any representation on it. And I saw Elaine just dropped off from ADOT.
Yeah. Okay.
But like with their strategic highway safety plan and the active transportation safety action plan, I was curious like if there's some overlap that,
Yeah, and they're not represented on the technical advisory group, but are kind of a focus group that we'd like to have with ADOT.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah. Did you say Mariel dropping off of ADOT? This is
Elaine
Elaine
Mariel was,
Mariel.
yeah, she was on this call, but then I think she just maybe had a 10 o'clock, so I saw her drop off.
Darn. Okay. Yeah. I thought you meant she was leaving ADOT.
No. No, she just left the meeting. maybe one more question if any folks have any.
I actually have one. Earlier, Ryan, you were talking about complementary funding streams that could serve uh, different modes at once, and how that would kind of promote overlapping planning between different planning initiatives that are concerned with different modes. And I personally hadn't heard of those kind of complementary funding streams. So if you could talk a little bit about that, and your experience kind of breaking those silos, I'd love to hear that.
Well, the way I interpreted Ryan's question was at MAG, we have several different funding programs. I'll just give a project, for instance. So we have an arterial widening program where it's we give federal funding for arterial, to widen arterial local project. But at the same time, and maybe their prioritization and their funding project prioritization or scoring could overlap with an active transportation component and a safety component at MAG, the various programs that we have. So we could be looking at that holistically. I think that's what Ryan was talking about, using those technical committees together rather than separately to identify projects or
I see.
projects competitively.
Yeah, and
right,
I
Ryan?
guess even I'll give the hotter take on that. Sometimes one form of transportation creates barriers for other forms of transportation, and then that ends up diluting the power of the funding stream that would be allocated to active transportation, for instance, right? So how you have sometimes a very auto-centric project creates a cost burden to active transportation that didn't exist before. And so sometimes these funding streams can be in competition in ways that deteriorate the impacts that we would like to have for healthier, more active transportation communities. So if we can get into the same room and talk through some of those shared costs and who's creating costs for whom, I think that would be a productive conversation.
Thank you both.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thanks again, Kay. We
Thank
will
you.
stay in touch. Maybe we'll have you back sometime next year to do an update. But if not, in the meantime, put a couple links in the chat just so folks can stay in the loop. But yeah, if there are any particular kind of stakeholder engagement, public engagement opportunities that you think are relevant for us, please, feel free to email and we can help spread the word in the communities that we work in,
Great.
Maricopa County.